Tension coils in my chest like a spring wound too tight as Nathan pulls into Lillian's driveway, the gravel crunching beneath our tires, a sound that drags me back to countless childhood memories. Some warm, others jagged. Through the car window, I watch autumn leaves spiral down from the maple trees Henry planted 20 years ago, their fiery reds and golds catching the fading light, a bittersweet reminder of a father who's been gone for 6 years. My stomach tightens, a familiar knot of dread I can't shake, and I whisper more to myself than to Nathan. Just dinner. He squeezes my hand, his touch warm and steady, echoing, just dinner, but his hazel eyes betray a flicker of unease, a silent acknowledgement of what we both know. After 3 years together, Nathan understands that Lillian's nice family dinners are rarely what they seem. They're a stage for her carefully orchestrated performances, where every smile and gesture hides an agenda. The house stands pristine as always, a picture of perfection that feels more like a facade than a home. White trim freshly painted, the walkway swept clean of leaves, not a single imperfection in sight. Lillian appears at the door before we even reach it, her pearl earrings glinting in the porch light, her smile tight and forced, never quite reaching her eyes. There's my girl, she says, embracing me with the faint scent of her signature Chanel, a perfume that clings to every memory I have of her, good and bad. She turns to Nathan, her voice overly sweet. So good of you to come. The dining room glows with candlelight, casting long shadows across the walls, and Henry's portrait looms over the sideboard, his stern gaze following us as we take our seats, a silent witness to the unfolding drama. The table is set with Lillian's best china, the kind she reserves for Christmas and funerals, its delicate floral pattern gleaming under the flickering light, but I notice only 3 place settings, a detail that sends a shiver down my spine. Where's Sophie? I ask, my voice sharper than I intend, expecting my sister at this so-called family dinner. Running late, Lillian replies, her tone too casual as she straightens a fork that's already perfectly aligned. Traffic, you know. I spot a box of tissues tucked discreetly beside her water glass, and my throat tightens. Something's off, a warning sign I can't ignore. Nathan's hand finds mine under the table, his warmth a quiet anchor as Lillian serves Henry's favorite meal. Pot roast with carrots and potatoes, a dish she made every Sunday until his heart gave out 6 years ago, the smell of it filling the room with memories of a time when our family felt whole. So, Lillian says, pouring Merlot into crystal glasses, her pour a little too generous, the wine splashing higher than it should. I wanted to talk about some wedding complications. She avoids my gaze, focusing on the glass in her hand, and I feel the air shift, heavy with unspoken intent. What complications? I ask, my voice steady despite the unease creeping up my spine. We've had the date set for months. She arranges her napkin in her lap with deliberate care, her voice softening in a way that feels rehearsed. Family traditions, you know. Your father always said weddings should be simple affairs. I take a sip of wine to bite back a retort. Henry had never said that. He'd dreamed of my wedding since I was 5, spinning tales of fairy lights and dancing until dawn, his eyes lighting up as he described a day filled with joy and celebration. The thing is, Lillian continues, a calculated tear sliding down her cheek, perfectly timed. Sophie is still so fragile after what happened with Mark. She dabs the tear with a crisp white handkerchief, her movements precise, almost theatrical. 3 months since he left her at the church, invitations sent, dress fitted, then nothing. Her voice trembles just enough to sell the performance, but I've seen this act before, and it doesn't fool me. I set my fork down, the pot roast turning to ash in my mouth, the weight of her words pressing against my chest. What exactly are you asking? I say, each word measured, though my heart races. Lillian reaches across the table, her fingers cold against mine, a stark contrast to Nathan's warmth. Would you consider postponing until next spring? She asks, her voice soft but laced with expectation. Or maybe a courthouse ceremony, something small, private? The room tilts, the candlelight blurring at the edges of my vision, and I close my eyes, transported back to Riverside Gardens, where Nathan knelt before me, his grandmother's diamond catching the late afternoon sun, his voice steady and sure. Elena Marie Harper, will you build a life with me? That night, we'd marked November 12th on our calendar with a red heart, a symbol of our shared dream. I'd called Lillian immediately, words tumbling in excitement, but she'd only said, "That's nice, dear. We'll talk details later," her tone dismissive, a warning I should have heeded. The $5,000 non-refundable deposit for the garden venue had been paid the next week, a commitment we couldn't undo. In the weeks since, I've watched Lillian tuck our invitations beneath magazines on her coffee table, felt the weight of her sighs when I mentioned flower arrangements, her subtle disapproval growing louder with each passing day. "It's about loyalty during hard times," Lillian says now, her voice pulling me back to the dining room, her eyes glistening with more unshed tears. "Family comes first." Nathan's jaw tightens beside me, a muscle ticking in his cheek, but he stays silent, watching her performance with a mix of frustration and restraint. The front door opens with a creak, and Sophie steps into the dining room, her timing impeccable, as if she'd been waiting for her cue. Her eyes are rimmed red, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe ponytail, every inch of her projecting the wounded sister she wants us to see. "Sorry I'm late," she says, her voice flat, not sounding sorry at all, as she ignores Nathan and me, taking her seat across the table. "I couldn't find parking," she adds, folding her hands with a deliberate calm that feels like a prelude to something worse. The air in the room thickens, the candlelight flickering as if it senses the storm about to break, and I brace myself for what comes next, knowing this dinner is anything but just dinner. Sophie's words cut through the candlelit dining room like a blade, her voice sharp and deliberate as she avoids my gaze, staring at the pristine tablecloth instead. "I didn't want to have this conversation," she says, her tone laced with a bitterness I've heard too many times before, "but some of us need to think beyond our own selfish choices." Lillian instantly reaches for her hand, her fingers wrapping around Sophie's with a tenderness that feels performative, her voice soft but firm. "It's okay, sweetheart, you're among family." Sophie continues, her eyes finally flicking to mine, cold and accusing. "November weddings are terrible anyway, so cold, so dreary." She pauses, then adds with a calculated edge, "I checked with your venue, their cancellation policy isn't too harsh if you act now." The realization hits me like ice water, chilling me to the core. This isn't dinner. It's an ambush, a carefully staged intervention meant to unravel the life Nathan and I have been building. I set my wine glass down with a decisive clink, the sound echoing in the tense silence, and I speak, each word deliberate. "My wedding is happening in November as planned." Sophie's mask slips for a moment, her carefully curated fragility giving way to something harder. "So my pain means nothing to you after all I've sacrificed?" Her voice rises, and Lillian's follows, a chorus of guilt meant to drown me. But Nathan stands, his hand finding mine, his presence a steady anchor in the storm. I rise beside him, a surprising calm flowing through me, and I say, my voice steady, "We're leaving." I turn to Lillian, my question hanging in the air like a challenge. "What would you do if your family asked you to put your happiness on hold because someone else's fell apart?" Her face transforms, the tears vanishing, replaced by a hardness I recognize from childhood arguments with Henry, her mouth tightening into a thin line. "You're making a terrible mistake," she says, each word crisp and cold, a warning I've heard too many times before. Sophie pushes back from the table, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor, her voice venomous. "You were always Dad's favorite. He'd let you get away with anything." The accusation isn't new, but it lands with precision, a dagger aimed at the soft spots of my heart, and I flinch, the pain of her words mingling with the lingering scent of pot roast in the air. Nathan's arm tightens around my waist as we near the door, but Lillian's voice follows us, sharp and unyielding. "Uncle Thomas and Aunt Margaret agree with us, so do your cousins. Nobody thinks this is appropriate timing." Sophie steps closer, her perfume cloying as it mixes with the dinner's remnants. "If you go through with this, I won't be there." Lillian's voice cuts through, flat and final. "That's your choice." The drive home is silent, streetlights flashing across Nathan's face, illuminating the muscle working in his jaw, a sign of the anger he's holding back for my sake. I stare out the window at passing houses, their windows glowing with the warmth of families eating dinner, watching television, living normal lives where mothers don't ambush their daughters with guilt and ultimatums. My phone buzzes at 6:17 the next morning, jarring me awake, a text from my cousin Emily. Just heard about the wedding drama. Why would you do this to Sophie after what she's been through? Lillian said. Anthony's devastated. Another buzz follows. Sophie's been crying for days. How hard would it be to pick another date? Nathan sits up beside me, reading the messages over my shoulder, his eyes narrowing as the weight of their words sinks in. We just had this conversation last night, he says, his voice low. They've been talking to everyone for weeks. The realization hits like a second wave of ice water, the depth of their manipulation sinking in, and I feel the ground shift beneath me, the family I thought I knew revealing itself as something far more calculated. After Nathan leaves for work, I drive to Lillian's house on impulse, my hands trembling as I use the key she doesn't know I still have, the metal cold against my palm. It's Thursday, her volunteer day at the hospital gift shop, so the house is empty, the silence heavy with the ghosts of past arguments. In her study, the drawer of her antique desk sticks as it always has, a stubborn relic of my childhood, and I tug it open, my breath catching as I find our wedding RSVPs beneath a stack of insurance papers. The envelopes are opened, responses removed, some marked with pencil notes in Lillian's precise handwriting. Call later, might change. My heart pounds as I realize she's been intercepting our guests' replies, controlling the narrative, shaping their perceptions of me as the selfish daughter who doesn't care about her sister's pain. I check Instagram on the drive home, my hands still shaking, and Sophie's latest post stares back at me. A photo of her gazing wistfully out a window, coffee mug in hand, captioned, "When someone you love chooses selfishness over compassion, it reveals who they truly are." There are 47 sympathetic comments below, 3 from our cousins, their words a chorus of condemnation that echoes Lillian's script. My phone rings, Lillian's number flashes on the screen, but I don't answer, letting it go to voicemail as I pull into a parking lot, rain beginning to tap against the windshield, a soft rhythm that matches the pounding in my chest. Her message plays, her voice dripping with disappointment. "Elena, your sister is absolutely crushed. I hope you realize what you're doing to this family. Sleep on it, make the right choice." I'm about to delete it when Sophie's message follows, her voice brittle with something that might be anger or tears or both. "Maybe you'll get left at the altar too, then you'd understand." The venom in her words cuts deep, and I sit there, the rain blurring the world outside, feeling the weight of their betrayal settle into my bones. That evening, I sit cross-legged on our living room floor, surrounded by wedding plans, invitation samples, vendor contracts, a timeline spreadsheet meticulously organized, each detail a piece of the dream Nathan and I have built together. The $5,000 non-refundable venue deposit receipt is paperclipped to a brochure showing autumn-colored maple trees surrounding a white gazebo, a vision of the November wedding I've always wanted. Nathan places a mug of chamomile tea beside me, its steam carrying the scent of honey and lavender, a small comfort in the chaos. He doesn't push for conversation, just sits nearby, his presence a counterbalance to the day's discoveries, a reminder that I'm not alone in this fight. "I could push the date back," I say, the words tasting sour on my tongue, a concession I don't want to make but feel pressured to consider. "You could," Nathan agrees, his voice gentle. "Is that what you want?" I trace my finger over a photo of our venue, the gazebo framed by golden leaves, a place that feels like a sanctuary in my mind. "It's what I've always done," I admit, the realization bubbling up from a deep, honest place inside me. Made myself smaller, given Sophie more room. The truth spills out, raw and unfiltered. Every birthday party, every holiday, every family dinner, I've spent my life shrinking for Sophie, dimming my own light to make space for her needs, her pain, her endless demands for attention. I reach for our framed save-the-date card, the red heart we drew around November 12th still vibrant, and place it deliberately atop a stack of old family photos. Lillian, Henry, Sophie, and me at the beach 15 years ago, all squinting into the sun, a moment of happiness before grief and jealousy tore us apart. "Not this time," I whisper, the decision settling into my bones like a long overdue exhale, bringing an unexpected peace that I cling to as the storm of family pressure continues to rage around me. The morning after the ambush, I sit at my desk, the weight of Sophie's words and Lillian's manipulations still heavy on my shoulders, but a quiet resolve begins to take root as I draft an email to them, rewriting it 3 times to strike the right balance of firmness and love. After careful consideration, our wedding will proceed on November 12th as planned. This date holds special meaning for Nathan and me, and we've invested emotionally and financially. I understand Sophie's pain, but postponing won't heal her heartbreak, and it isn't fair to ask us to put our lives on hold. I love you both, but it's best if you don't attend unless you can support us wholeheartedly. When you're ready to respect my choices, I'll be here. Love. Elena. My hands tremble as I click send, the finality of the action both terrifying and liberating, a line drawn in the sand after years of shrinking myself to fit their expectations. Golden leaves dance around our feet as Nathan and I walk the grounds of Riverside Gardens, the November breeze carrying the scent of damp earth and wood smoke from a nearby fire pit, a crisp reminder of the season we chose for our wedding. Late afternoon sun filters through the maple trees, casting a honey-colored glow across the clearing where our ceremony arch will stand, and Nathan squeezes my hand, his voice warm. That's our golden hour. The wedding coordinator approaches with a clipboard, and I mention white roses with sprigs of autumn berries and gold ribbon, the chaos of family drama fading into the background as planning our wedding feels right, sacred even, a reclaiming of the joy I've fought so hard to protect. But the calm is short-lived. Lillian calls at 1:17 a.m., her words slurring at the edges. How could you shut out your own family after everything I've given up for you girls? I sit up in bed, Nathan stirring beside me, and I respond, my voice steady despite the hour. Mom, it's the middle of the night. We can talk tomorrow if you're sober. I hang up, turning my phone face down as it lights up again, Nathan's arm wrapping around my shoulders, a silent promise of support as I navigate the fallout. At my apartment-based wedding shower, several empty chairs mark relatives who RSVP'd but didn't show, their absence a silent protest, and my friend Rachel whispers, Cousin Meredith told people you disinvited your mother because she couldn't afford to contribute more. The ache blooms in my chest, doubt creeping in. Maybe we should have postponed, but Nathan appears from the kitchen, his voice firm. 3 months would have become 6, then a year. It was never about the date. It was about them believing they had the right to demand you shrink your joy. At the bridal salon, Rachel adjusts my veil, the dress hugging my curves perfectly, and she says, her voice thick with emotion, "You look stunning. I'm proud of you for doing this your way." I admit, it feels bittersweet. Lillian should be here, Sophie fussing with my train, but I straighten my shoulders, looking at my reflection. It's mine. This moment is still mine. At Henry's grave, I place fresh flowers on his headstone, tracing the engraved letters of his name, my breath visible in the chilly morning air. I keep thinking about what you'd say about Mom, Sophie, about me standing my ground. Back home, I find a card in Henry's old desk drawer, his handwriting slanted. For Elena, when you need it most, live your truth, sweetheart. The people who truly love you will adjust their vision, not ask you to change yours. Your joy matters. Claim it with both hands. All my love, Dad. I sink to the floor, the card pressed to my heart, tears finally falling as his words give me the strength I didn't know I needed. 3 weeks before the wedding, a package arrives. Grandma Harper's silver hairpin, Lillian's handwriting on the box, a silent olive branch. A text follows. Can we meet for coffee, just us? I meet her at Rosewater Cafe, setting a 30-minute limit, my boundaries firm. Lillian looks smaller, less certain, her pearl earrings catching the light as she says, I was wrong. After your father died, I lost my compass. I've been enabling Sophie for years, and it's hurt us all, especially you. She slides an envelope across the table, Sophie's letter, 3 pages of her handwriting, admitting her jealousy and pain, and Lillian adds, she's not ready to see you, but she's doing the work with a therapist. The garden venue glows at the rehearsal, string lights twining through maple branches, candles lining the stone pathway, the florist's arrangements of rust-colored mums and golden roses a perfect complement to the autumn setting. Lillian stands back, understated in navy blue, directing a cousin to Nathan's mother for seating questions, her restraint a sign of change. At the rehearsal dinner, she raises her glass. To Elena and Nathan, may your love be stronger than the storms that shaped it. Her words simple and sincere, no dramatic tears, just a quiet acknowledgement of our journey. On the wedding day, a florist delivers a bouquet of crimson peonies and white calla lilies. Sophie's gift, with a card, be happier than I was, I mean it. I place it beside Henry's photo on the memorial table, whispering, "We're not there yet, Dad, but we're trying." The November sun breaks through morning clouds, sending golden light across the garden as I walk toward Nathan, his eyes teary as he takes my hands, steadying their tremble with his familiar warmth. At the reception, Sophie arrives in a simple blue dress, clutching a friendship bracelet I made her as teens, her expression vulnerable. I offer her champagne, no words, just eye contact, a bridge of forgiveness and progress. Lillian toasts, "I didn't always get it right, but I never stopped loving you, Elena," her voice steady, the crowd listening in stillness, no tension, only emotion. At dusk, we light paper lanterns by the pond, Nathan, Lillian, Sophie, and I touching flame to wick, our 4 lanterns rising into the twilight, a constellation of hopes among dozens more. Our first dance unfolds under fairy lights, no speeches, just connection, and I spot Sophie joining cousins on the dance floor, her movements tentative but welcomed. As we drive away through an arch of sparklers, I look back at the garden glowing behind us, my family standing together, arms raised in farewell, not perfectly healed, but trying, and for tonight, that's enough. Nathan squeezes my hand. "Happy?" I rest my head on his shoulder, watching the sparkler light fade. "Yes, finally," the weight of years lifting as we step into our future together.